This is episode 273 of the Super League pod. Find out who's had the rug pulled out from under them, who's showing a bit of leg, and who is way younger than you thought. There's some serious stuff to cover this week, so stick with us through that, including more than usual round ball game chat and a little bit more Wolfpack news breaking as we go. But above all else, it's the return of Super League with your fan match reviews. So get strapped in, hold on to your cardboard SLP hats. It's SLP time. Hello listeners, welcome along to episode 273 of the Super League pod. This week you have myself, Wigan fan Mark, and we are joined by Hull KR fan / Coventry fan / most of the teams around the world fan Tim G. How are you doing, Tim?
Yes, not too bad, thanks. Well, I've got no Coventry season left now, so it's fully behind KR for the rest of the year, I guess.
Yeah, and Coventry will be one of the teams we mention when we get into the news, I'm sure. Do you want to tell... do you know what? I wanted you on this week. I wanted the rotation to work that you were on this week. I thought, at least Tim's team will be playing. and then you're not, because of Toronto. So I'm sure we'll talk a bit about Toronto in the news as well. Do you want to tell everyone about our wonderful sponsor before we get started?
Yeah, this episode is sponsored by Rob's Toy Shop, where you can find a range of gifts, toys, rugby league birthday cards and more at Rob's Toy Shop on eBay. If you head on over to stores.ebay.co.uk/Rob's Toy Shop, and on any orders over £5 you can earn 5% cash back, and also 1% of your order value will go into the SLP coffers just by putting SLP discount at checkout.
Great stuff. Thanks to Rob's Toy Shop for their support of the show. On the show this week, the Super League match reviews are back with all the stats and fan reviews that you used to expect. It feels like so long ago. Before then, we've got a heavy slate of news to get through, and we'll have the NRL results and Britwatch stats. Plus, we'll make our predictions for next week as 7 more teams make their first post-lockdown appearances in the Super League. Given that the show format's in a bit more of a traditional style, now the quiz is going to be a bit more of a traditional 3 questions style as well. It's starting to feel like a normal show, but we'll think about how normal it still feels when we're rolling through the news, which isn't. It's still got some surreal elements to it, but we'll move on to the news from around the world of rugby league.
So on to the news, and Holders Warrington will face St Helens in the quarter-finals of the Challenge Cup in a repeat of last year's final. The two sides were among 6 teams given byes to the last 8 after the 6th round had to be withdrawn following the withdrawals of Toronto and 5 clubs outside Super League. In the 6th round, Castleford Tigers will face Hull FC and Catland Dragon will take on Wakefield Trinity. Both ties will be held in Huddersfield on the 22nd of August and shown live on the BBC. Wigan Warriors await the winners of the tie between Castleford and Hull, while whoever comes out on top in the game between Catalan and Wakefield will then meet Salford. The last of the quarterfinals, which are scheduled for the weekend of the 19th and 20th of September, will see Leeds Rhinos face Hull Kingston Rovers. Well, that's Heather's birthday weekend, so some negotiation needs to happen there.
I mean, you've got one team in a Wembley final. What do you think the odds are of another one reaching a Wembley final whilst you're just down the road but can't actually go into the ground?
I mean, I think it's almost odds on now, isn't it? Yeah, now the typical Murphy's Law has happened. I think if it strikes once, it will probably strike again.
Well, you've got a tough first game up there against Leeds. I don't think there's much to pick out on the draws. Unfortunate for the 4 teams that get the extra game, or does it help them build momentum in the competition, the winners in that?
I think you can argue it both ways. Sort of like you said, I think how legitimacy as well. I think redrawing it was the right thing to do, definitely, because otherwise it was just going to be a complete farce. and
well, there was potentially a team that was going to get through to the semi-finals having not played a game. With one of the ties having two clubs that had pulled out of it in it. Yeah, so you're right.
And it was potentially dangerous as well that if the other teams felt they were forced to play it, and there's a player welfare issue there as well. So I think withdrawing it was right. How Catalan seem to have used it as a conspiracy theory that the world's against them, I'm not really sure, because they've replaced an away tie with an away tie, so it was going to be the same whatever happened.
Yeah.
So I don't really know where that's. Well, we do. It's Bernard. Bernard's going to Bernard. But other than that, yeah, I think it's exciting to get the cup in. I think actually keeping the cup is important because it would have been an easy scapegoat to get rid of, but obviously with the commercial deals that are made separately for the cup, that kind of keeps it there. Whether what we see happen in next season, when we'll be looking at a presumably some form of shortened season, and how the cup will be worked, whether it be played midweek as almost like a development thing for the Super League sides, you don't know, but we shall see.
It's great to have games on the BBC, and the Challenge Cup is the way that we deliver that, and these games that we're going to see now are all between Super League sides, so it gives it that added sort of focus of quality, you would hope, as well. And we won't be talking about how crap the crowds are for the early rounds of the Cup, because
exactly
there's no choice in the matter, which is one positive, I suppose, from fans not being allowed to go, is that them choosing not to go isn't a storyline.
There'll be a bit of cardboard in the stands, but the cardboard can't get up and walk out, so that's always a bonus.
Well, I'm not sure the cardboard cutouts that we paid for the Super League games won't be making their way to Huddersfield, so I don't know if they're going to do anything in terms of cardboard cutouts, but we'll see. I've not heard anything on that line. Right, let's slip into
this week in Toronto.
John Davidson of 4020 News reported on Wednesday that the RFL has offered to help struggling Toronto players waiting for their wages. 4020 News understands that the governing body has stepped in and offered to pay the Wolfpack players an emergency payment of £1,000 to help them cover their bills. The Toronto squad has not been paid their wages for the months of May and June, and haven't been paid in July yet either, so difficult times for all those players and the RFL, I assume through the charity side of things or something, I don't know, but it hasn't been mentioned, but have stepped in to try and support those players kind of in the interim.
Yeah, I mean, it's right for the RFL to do that. It's sad that they have to, and that's something that's at Toronto's door. It's up to them to be able to run their business to a successful level that they can honour the contracts they've signed. But it is their mismanagement that's got them to that point. Whether the RFL can do that for much longer is another question, because the coffers aren't that big to start with, and they'll be losing money left, right and centre through the RFL events that have had to be cancelled. So it's something that is an interim payment while things are being sorted out.
Yeah, I mean, the terms of the loan from the government were that Toronto weren't to benefit, and it wasn't to be used to pay players' wages, but maybe this is some sort of situation that could be used from those funds, because it's not the club that's benefiting, and it's not the wages that are being paid. It's more part of the community of the game pulling together to support people within the game, isn't it? Which is kind of what the loan's there for. So hopefully, all those people get their bills paid, get where they need to be as well. We've got another story later in the news roundup about Ricky Latelli, which is particularly worrying.
Yeah, so Danny Ward, the London Broncos head coach, believes that London should be considered as being in prime position to be reinstated into Super League if Toronto are unable to take their place at the top level next year. Ward was speaking with Mark Wilson on the TalkSport 2 Rugby League preview show, and the Broncos boss believes that the club should be considered first for taking their spot after being relegated last year, should the game's governing bodies seek to replace the Wolfpack. Despite their ambitions, Ward also emphasised his support for the Toronto project.
Yeah, you can't sort of start saying he doesn't agree in expansion after all the things he's said about supporting London in the last few years. So fair enough. I think
this is right. This is sort of something that I thought of when I first heard the Toronto news, that London should get the first consideration for if there isn't a way to get Toronto back in, which I really hope there is, because I think they bring more to the sport and the profile of the game than they take, because I don't really think they take away anything. So I think if the management at Toronto can be sorted out to be sensible and for the long term, then I think it's a really good idea to keep them involved. But if not, I think London should be the next priority.
Yeah, well,
partly because they fell out last year, and so they've done it from a sporting point of view, but also from a longer term point of view, that if we're not expanding into Toronto, then we should be making a more of a concerted effort in London.
Yeah, and they've shown big strides in the development of players' side of things down in London, and they're operating as a full-time club, which is something that some of the other wannabes aren't doing. So, in that way, there's less disruption, I suppose, as well. Featherstone have formally requested consideration to be in the Super League, haven't they, next year? So they're one of the other key runners and riders in this. I suppose the other two big likely candidates for wanting to be in the Super League next year would be Leigh and Toulouse. You'd think those are the four championship clubs who'd be making the biggest case. I'm not sure a village that's got less people than Toronto get to big home games, living in it, that are in a borough where there's two Super League clubs already, have a stronger case. But then you can point to London's crowds being small.
Sorry, were you referring to Fev or Leigh there? Because I'm genuinely not sure which one.
Featherstone. But with London, you can certainly question the crowd figures and see, is that beneficial, and the facilities they play in are a bit small time, aren't they? Even though most people Trailfinders like them. Toulouse, they've never.
I suppose with London as well, it's the competition of itself in London that never helps things. That they keep scheduling Scholars games on at the same time as the Broncos, which is utter madness.
Yeah, there needs to be better tie-ins with lots of other ways of getting people into the strategic side of the Broncos in terms of what they do off the field has never really been worked.
No, and they play community
in the first 5 years of Super League.
And they play the community game at the same time. So there was a situation last year where you had big games in the community game at Saturday afternoon, 3:00, the same time as Broncos were playing in Ealing, and 5.5 miles away on White Hart Lane, Scholars are playing. Now, I'd quite happily be at any one of those three places, and you have to choose. And there's at least 50 people who are probably in the same position I was.
Probably more when you really roll it out and you think about how it should be worked together. But yeah, so Leigh, they'd be making their argument. They've obviously invested heavily in a squad as well. Toulouse, from sort of a playing perspective, probably haven't earned it yet, have they? Because they've never finished top of the championship at any stage or anything like that. But then, do they bring more to the competition in terms of the value they'll add than any of the other clubs? So they'd be the four clubs to consider if Toronto don't get back in, wouldn't they? Yeah,
I think so.
York maybe is an argument as well with their new stadium that maybe finally will open next year. Who knows? Better fucking I'd do. There's a World Cup game there. But
you wait. It'll be moved to Kyiv. But yeah, I mean,
damn it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see that Featherstone Elite. I don't know what they bring in terms of anything new. If you're replacing Toronto, so you're replacing something that's new, interesting, and gives a different edge, and you've got to think of it from a TV deal perspective that brings new subscribers and new interest, because the Sonny Bill Williams factor that will bring in people to watch rugby league that won't have watched it for a while, and the sort of people who will buy or keep Sky subscriptions off the back of it.
Yeah, and Featherstone bring everything that is core to the Heartlands with them, but you got to.
But they're not commercial. They've not got the commercial value that or same with Lee. Neither of them have the commercial value that you can get on from the other places. So I just don't think, unfortunately, that much as Featherstone do good work in their community and